Welcome back, beautiful people, to the Alpha Mama podcast. I am super excited to have you on board today. Today is episode 13 of our podcast. Our topic today is wild vision. So, who is Alpha Mama? Get obsessed with success. Alpha Mama brings you the lowdown on books that change your lives in the self-development space. We do the reading and research so you can sit back, listen and take the steps to live your best life and move towards a grounded life that reflects your authentic self. Growing up, I didn't feel like I had a lot of great guidance. The lack of guidance in my own life led me to make choices that accumulated in me hitting rock bottom by the age of 30. I felt like I had no one to turn to, and that's when I turned to books and researching how to live my best life. Fast forward almost a decade and I have experienced total transformation. At Alpha Mama, we believe it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. The only thing you need to succeed at your life is the belief that you can and the commitment to carry through with backing yourself. A beautiful person once said to me, "Wherever I am is where I belong." And I believe that whatever it is you desire is calling you, and it's an invitation for you to step into your power and step towards your best life and your most authentic self. So, if you haven't been on these podcasts before, you haven't been listening or tuning in before, the way that we roll is that we go through 3 different aspects of what we think are critical elements of success, and that's creating a vision. So having a really compelling narrative to drive you forward in your life. Then self-discipline. How do we get there? How do we get up and we make it happen every single day? And then finally, resources and abundance mindset. So how do we cultivate the resources or the mindset we need, abundance mindset we need to get us to where we're going in our vision. So today we are looking at wild vision. Over the last 11 weeks, Alpha Mama has been on the road. We did a road trip around Western Australia and we came back down the middle, which was just mind-blowing. We snorkeled with cuttlefish, which was amazing. And went and slept underground at Coober Pedy in a mine, and we did a mine tour on learning how to mine opals, and we spent a lot of time in the desert, and there were lots of birds of prey. Bird of prey comes to mind. So I was feeling really like earthed and grounded out in nature, and I've been really obsessed with this idea of rewilding. And part of going on this trip for me, especially post-COVID, but we'd been planning it for a number of years, was to kind of step out of our box, step out of and get some perspective on life. But also, I've got a son, to kind of rewild us as a group, rewild my son and get him connected with nature and the real world and out there. And boy, was it amazing. We saw crocodiles, just everything you could possibly imagine, So it was just so fantastic. And that is what we're talking about today. We're talking about wilding and creating a wild vision. And that's something that during the trip I had discussed that we would be doing a series on this. And for me, in terms of vision, when I think about what really, really compels me as a human being right now, especially with COVID and all the chaos that's going on in the world, the thing that really compels me is wilding and being connected with nature and getting out and swimming in the ocean and connecting with the Mother Earth and being grounded, because everything else seems so freaking insane at the moment. On top of that, you know, we seem to live in a world nowadays that's sort of kind of spiraled out of control. You know, I've been working in the legal industry for about 14 years now, and I remember when I was doing my law degree and they said that regulations and legislation in Australia had exploded from the 1970s and had increased by something like 400% since the 1970s. So we live in an extremely like over-regulated, over-orderly world, and you know, to the point of insanity almost. Like you start wondering who's actually regulating this system that we live in, who's monitoring all these rules and regulations, and are they actually cost effective? Are they efficient? Are they doing what they're designed to do? And do we actually need this many regulations in our lives? Is that actually the best way forward? Or are we now living in like a police state or a big brother state, you know, and losing touch with some more essential elements of what it means to be human and to be grounded and to be sane in a way. So because we're going left or right of field, whatever way you want to look at it, I've created, today's a little bit of an amalgamation of a few books. So it has been a little bit of a break since I did the last podcast, but don't worry, we have been super, super busy working on this episode. So today, in terms of creating or cultivating a wild vision for your life, what I found when I was researching this topic is there's not a lot out there in terms of wild vision. Okay, creating a wild vision. I know there's a book that costs about $1,000, which is only available in hardcover, called Reptile Mind, and a lot of solicitors in the US use it. And it's a way of, you know, manipulating jurors and so forth. And that would be interesting because it does go back to our like archaic wild mind. However, we're not going to do that today because I didn't buy that book and I don't have it and I haven't read it, though I'm sure it would be very interesting. So instead, we're looking at some other wild, inspiring narratives. So the books that we're looking at today are Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Wild Mind, A Field Guide to the Human Psyche by Dr. Bill Plotkin, Born to Run, The Hidden Tribe, the Ultra Runners and the Greatest Race the World Has Ever Seen by Chris Mcdougall, and Wayfinding Leadership by Dr. Shelly Spiller. So who are these authors? What are their credentials? And should we listen to any of them and what they have to say about anything? Well, most of you probably would have heard of Women Who Run with Wolves. So Dr. Clarissa Estes, I think it's quite an old book, or it's an older book, and she basically looks at the wild woman archetype using Jungian psychology in this book, and invites women to kind of step out of the good girl shell or box and then embrace their wild woman. So really step out of, you know, their comfort zone and what's safe, and, you know, reconnect with like the dirty, messy, dark parts of being a woman and the rich, dense parts that we don't want the world to see, you know. Wild Mind by, so she's a psychologist. Wild Mind, A Field Guide to the Human Psyche. Look, Bill Plotkin, I have put a video on there for you. So he's obviously a really left of field psychologist. He seems a bit space cadet-y and airy-fairy. Having said that, I think sometimes it's good to just kind of reach out into left of field perspectives and also right of field perspectives to kind of, you know, look at where the boundaries of ideas lie. So he does have a PhD obviously in psychology, and again he has written this book based on looking at how the mind is mapped, how we're similar to nature, and he also covers this archetype of the wild mind and the tribal mind. So he really goes into this concept of creating our tribal nature, inner nature person, you know. So I really like that. Then Chris Mcdougall, he used to work for, he's a journalist, so he worked for the New York Times and Men's Magazine, and basically Born to Run, he was having all these issues with running, and he was getting all this pain, and he went to all these specialists and they said, oh, inserts, insoles, everything. And he goes, oh, there's got to be some way to hack the system. So he gets clued up on this. He hears about this tribe, isolated tribe down in Mexico who lives in canyons called the Tarahumara, and they're these ultra marathon super athletes. And he goes down and he tries to find these people, and sure enough, he finds the Tarahumara, and they're these Mexican runners who were similar to, they're from a similar era to Mayans and Aztecs, but when the Spanish conquistadors came in the 1600s to South America, unlike the Aztecs and the Mayans who tried to fight the Spanish, the Tarahumara just ran away, and they're really good at running. And then they went and hid in the canyons, in the mountains, and they created these little villages that are like huts in the side of the mountain, and you can't even see the house when you're standing right in front of it. So they're really well hidden and camouflaged. And they can run something like between 100 to 400 miles over a 24 to 48 hour period, and they do it either barefoot or they do it using a little piece of rubber like tied to their foot with string, right? And they are still running at like 89, or they're running really young. And so there's something about them that's wild and special, and we can learn from. And he's adopted their techniques, and he's now got no foot pain, and he's an avid runner, and you can run forever basically. And then finally, Wayfinding Leadership by Dr. Shelly Spiller. So Dr. Shelly Spiller has a PhD. I've put a video in there that she has from YouTube, and she is Māori from New Zealand, and she was at Harvard University, and they asked her to write a book on Māori leadership, and so she wrote this amazing book called Wayfinding Leadership, and basically did so with two other like elders who are wayfinding navigators on the Waka, and so really, really inspiring book, talking about wayfinding leadership and how the Waka is like represents all the different elements of leadership. So very, very interesting. So we're going to put some links on our website to some videos if you want to see some more about these authors. Wild Vision. So we've taken these 4 books, and instead of, I suppose, going through each book separately and what it has to say, I wanted to kind of create a fusion or mixture of what wild vision looks like. So today we're really just planting some seeds in terms of cultivating a wild vision in our lives, and what this means and why we might want to start cultivating wild vision in our lives. And why? Why do we want a wild vision? Why am I enticed by wild vision? Now, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, I've worked in the legal industry for about 14 years. And one thing that I've really come to notice is, often you find people who are more right-wing in general with their political views, they say things like, people, it's all about the individual, small business, people need to help themselves, free market, we don't need as many safeguards, we don't want any of those dole bludgers taking our public money, go get a job, basically. And then on the other side of the political spectrum, you've got these left-wing people who are like, let's look after everyone, everyone deserves equal everything, and these right-wing people are like, no, work for it and then you get it. Well, what I've noticed from my work experience over many years is that yes, to some extent there are these dole blodgers that try and take advantage of the system. But the truth of the matter is, from my perspective, is that life is a jungle. Life is a real jungle. And there are a lot of people who actually aren't equipped with the tools necessary to live wildly, to live in this free market culture. Maybe they have mental health issues, maybe they have a disability, maybe they've just been brought up with subconscious programming that hasn't equipped them with the tools they need to navigate their way through life effectively or own their life completely. And then what you see happens is that predators in the jungle come in, they swoop in and they go, oh, caca, caca. It's an easy target. Let's take advantage of this person, and it happens a lot, and you see it a lot, and that's not going away. I don't think that's going away. I think that you can dress up the world with as many regulations and legislation as you want, but the reality is that we don't necessarily have the public resources, or we don't direct them in a way that actually caters to all these people's needs. And if those safety nets aren't always there to protect people, and people do slip through the gaps and they do slip through the system, then what can you do on the other side of shoring up safety nets? The other thing that you can do is cultivate and build resilience. And so that's what I think Wild Vision is really about. It's about rewilding yourself and cultivating and building resilience within your life so that you have a solid plan that's going to see you through to, through any storm in your life, through any predator that's going to come your way, because you're going to know who you are, you're going to know what you want, you're going to understand your boundaries of self-respect, self-value, self-worth, and then you are going to let that drive you and guide you, and you're not going to let people overstep those boundaries because you have self-respect, right? So that is what it's all about. And, unfortunately, so I think in that regard, Women Who Run with Wolves is a really, really great example of a book that's inviting women to step up to that plate and go, do you know what? When people say be a good girl. I need to be a good girl to earn respect. What they're really saying is stay in your box and do what you're told and do as you're told and behave in the way that you're told to behave. And the truth is, when you do that, no one respects you and they treat you like a victim, and you become a victim and you cultivate victim mindset, which is just really sad, because I don't believe that women are victims, and there really is a narrative out there that women are victims. And if you have ever read Nelson Mandela's autobiography, he talks about how freedom starts in the mind, and that's something he realised while he was in prison. And so in terms of women stepping out of their victimhood and out of the good girl box, it has to start in the mind, to believe that you aren't a victim and to believe that you are capable, you've got capacity, and you are a wild animal, and this is a jungle, and you can survive. You have all the tools. And that's the next really inspiring thing that comes from Wild Mind by Bill Plotkin, is he approaches mentality and mindset through this nature-based conception, which means he sees us as whole. And he argues that in Western culture, what we tend to do is we tend to minimalise or have this reductionist approach to health, to mindset, to the mind-body connection. And through Wild Mind, what he's advocating for or arguing is that, we are like nature, and he creates this map that basically follows the 4 seasons and says, we're all whole. We are all whole. And we all have the tools within us to self-heal, self-regulate. And when you start from this starting point that you're whole, you're not broken, you're whole, and you've got this self-healing system, it really shifts your self-perception and your mindset. And I really love the fact that he embraces and engages like a whole section, I think it's the South, on our primal mind and our wild mind and our tribal instinctual body, and reconnecting with nature and reconnecting with your tribal sense of belonging to, life and connection with others, and getting out into nature and, asking yourself a series of questions about your capabilities, and then being open and receptive to listening to those answers. And so I suppose in those 2 regards, you're building a sort of subtle, through these books, they're inviting you to kind of open up to this idea of being whole, being allowed to step outside of the box. And I think, as an entrepreneur myself, one thing that I've found in that pathway of, moving towards success is you've really got to step out of your comfort zone all the time. You've got to step out of your boundaries. You've got to make decisions and do things differently to how you've ever done them before. And so when you have not follow all the rules, and not break any laws, but not follow all the rules that you may have set in your head or that may have been set through your subconscious programming. And then focus on, taking risks, measured risks or whatever, and having the guts to stand up for yourself and fight for what is meaningful for you. And make things happen, take ownership of your life. And that is all jungle mindset. That's wild jungle mindset. You need it to survive in the commercial world. And quite frankly, I believe you need it to just survive in the world in general. We do live in a world now where, we give every child rewards. We tell every child they're amazing. And, when they get bullied or when they go out into the world and they're not coping, it's because we haven't equipped them with resilience, and the resilience that they actually need to survive in life, which is really scary. But anyway, and then with Born to Run and Wayfinding Leadership, these books are just so inspiring. Like, I have recently purchased barefoot running shoes. What these books actually invite us to do is, I guess what I really love about Born to Run and about Wayfinding Leadership is it's a stark reminder that we live in a world that has a really homogenized narrative around what it means to be human and who we are, etc. We live in a world where, Western ideas dominate global thinking. We all have access to things like Hollywood. It is slightly shifting now. There's a lot more Bollywood out there. But Bollywood's still quite I don't want to say Americanized, but it is becoming more Americanized and all about being cool and the cool look and all the rest. And, capitalism is the, thing, and colonialists won all the wars, and so they wrote the history books, and so then they tell us how things are. And then there is obviously this resurgence and this backlash to these tribal eras. But the thing that makes me feel really excited is that, standard medicine tells you, oh, yeah, you have to wear insoles in your shoe to get better. And then you go and look at these Tarahumara, which are these Mexicans, this tribe in Mexico, and they've still got people running at 89 with no injuries, running 400 kilometres a day or over 2 days. And you think, okay, well, maybe there's a lot more possibility out there in the world than what we're being fed and what we're being told. And here's a group of people who are doing things differently, and have been doing things differently to the standard status quo of how you do running for hundreds of years, and they're doing it really well. And those people win lots of ultra marathons and so forth, the Tarahumara. And actually there was a really interesting theory, which I love, so I'm going to share it with you, that Chris Mcdougall, and I think he brings it up in his TED Talk, comes up with in the book, but it's not just in the book. There are a couple of universities that have done a lot of research on barefoot running and understanding how human beings work and why these Tarahumara can run so far. And what they reckon is that humans aren't, we're not like leopards or tigers. We can't run fast, though men can run a lot faster at short distance than women for hunting and so forth. But we can run really, really long distances for a really, really long time. And they have this theory that before, weapons 200,000 years ago were introduced, that what we would do is we would pack animals and we would run as a pack and chase our prey until we outran them and they fatigued, and then the men would kill them. And the reason, and then everyone would be that everyone was there when the animal died, and then everyone would get a meal, because there's no point in outrunning your prey if everyone who needs to eat the prey is, 200 kilometres back at the village or whatever. And so everyone in the pack had to be able to run like hundreds of kilometres to chase these prey. And there are a lot of things, so if you ever read the book, there are a lot of things that they talk about in the book in terms of analysis of how the human body is designed that implies that we are runners and we were actually born to run, and our design is to run long distances, not necessarily fast, but just continuous running. And I found this extremely inspiring because, it's interesting. Over the last few years, I've been doing not full marathons, but maybe 28Ks, 30K runs at least once or twice a year. And, I get to the end of the run and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be able to do this better, but I'm knackered now. And I'm listening to this book, I thought, wow, I need to shift my mindset. 30 kilometres is nothing. I should be able to run 50, 100 kilometres, and I should be fine doing that, So it made me realise that I'm creating limits in my own mind about what I'm capable of. And I think that that's really what I'm getting at here, is that, by cultivating the wild vision, what we're inviting you to do is look outside of what's right in front of you and start opening your mind to the possibility that maybe the way you see the world isn't the only way that the world is. And in the same way, Wayfinding leadership talks about these navigators who have a very different style of leadership that is holistic. The Maori wayfinder doesn't go out looking for an island. They hold the island in their mind or in their mind's eye, and then they let the island come to them, and they read the stars and they learn the way that the ocean works based on a combination of things. So stars, the way that waves bounce off islands, the way that clouds form above islands, and the colour of clouds over land mass versus over ocean, and then looking at what kind of birds might appear when land is nearby, and just the way the currents work. So are there warm currents or cold currents? Feeling the way the boat rocks in the water to determine where in the ocean you are and what direction you need to go in. So very fascinating stuff. But the other thing that I really loved about Wayfinding leadership is that, it's really about everyone in the team being an essential part of the team, and everyone being autonomous as well as connected. So this really interconnected ownership of navigation and where you're going and direction. And so recognising that, vision isn't just one thing or getting to one place, but it's actually the process of getting there and building the team and the vision and the connection that creates an interweaving that's beautiful and so solid that you end up having a whole team, going towards that vision. So that was a really interesting, deep analysis of wild vision. So I hope that what I've shared with you today has inspired you, or at least planted some seeds. Now, what I'm going to put out there as conclusion to this podcast, basically, is that I'm not kind of trying to create a wild vision and then sell you the wild vision. I suppose I'm sharing with you or inviting you to start asking some questions, and open yourself up to being inspired. Because when it comes to wild vision and building resilience and stepping out of your comfort zone, it's about stepping into that unknown space and opening yourself up to the unknown and asking yourself the questions of how you can navigate in those precarious areas that are a bit grey and fuzzy, and there's no clarity and you're not feeling 100% in control, and you have to kind of feel into it and feel into your intuition and find some deeper sense of drive. Yeah. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you found that really inspiring. I'm so excited to have you here listening to the show. And next week, we are going to be talking about wild discipline. How do we cultivate it? What does it look like? Where do we start? So excited. So, catch you next week. It's Alpha Mama over and out. See ya.